So, white people still benefit from slavery? Got more recessorary? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense, Logic, and Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, white people still benefit from slavery is an example of fictitious notion. Again, a bunch of BS that black people believe. They're just simply not true. They want to believe it, but it's not true. They have no evidence to back it up. Now, anytime conservative people say, slavery is over, it ended over 150 years ago, it's irrelevant to today. Nobody today was ever a slave. Nobody today ever owned any slaves. It's over. Stop being a victim. Stop living in the past. Stop living in something that you never saw, you never experienced. Now, first thing that they'll come back with is, well, white people still benefit today. And even the white people who migrated to this country after slavery ended in the early 1900s, they still benefit from the days what they claim. Now you ask them, well, how do they benefit from it? And they'll say some stupid stuff like, well, infrastructure. Okay, so white people benefit from infrastructure, but black people don't. So oftentimes you hear them talk about federal buildings and roads, and I'm like, so black people are denied access to the roads. Black people are banned from driving on the roads. Black people are banned from going into federal buildings or any other infrastructure in America. That's nonsense. So I looked up, is there real evidence and data that any of these race hustlers could present to me as evidence that white people still benefit from slavery? So I looked it up and I ran into this article on a website called Work in Process. And this was an article written by Mr. Robert L Reese. And according to Robert Reese, Robert Reese, he found the evidence, or there was a study done that found his evidence that white people still benefit from slavery today. So basically what they did was they looked at census data from 1860, and they compared it to census data from 2014. And according to that data, white people who live in the counties that had the most slaves do better than white people who live in counties that had the least amount of slavery. So according to them, this is proof positive that white people today still benefit from slavery, even the white people who wasn't here when slavery existed, who migrated here after slavery. All white people benefit from slavery still today because of this. Now they basically track this based off of 6 measures, and they track based upon percentage of people uninsured, medium income, the unemployment rate, the poverty rate, home ownership rate, and there's a percentage of people on food stamps. Now, there's so much wrong with this. This is wrong on so many levels. First and foremost, this is a major assumption. Okay, this is a major assumption, and they assume that the only reason why the white people in these counties are doing better than the other white people was because of slavery. Slavery has allowed them to do better. They have no evidence that show that these counties are doing better because of slavery. It's just an assumption. Now, there are so many other factors that you have to go through before you even begin to just say it's slavery. Number one, what was the total population of these counties? Right? If there were more people living in said county over another county, it means that more likely to have people to own slaves, and there are more likely to be slaves there. So, perhaps maybe because it was a bigger county, a bigger city, a bigger area. And then, how was slavery the reason? There's still no evidence that these counties are doing better 150 years later because of slavery. There could be so many other things and factors that have happened. I always look at Pittsburgh. As y'all know, Pittsburgh used to be a blue-collar town. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the reason why they call the Pittsburgh Steelers the Steelers, because there was a lot of steel work going on. Well, after a lot of the manufacturing was taken from America and shipped overseas, mostly to China, They didn't sit around bitch moaning, whining, and crying. They reinvented themselves. And now today Pittsburgh is an IT city. And I would say they'll probably have a higher income per capita, medium income per capita today than they had back then, since they're being their IT city, and IT is some of the highest paid jobs. So was that because of slavery? Did slavery have any impact upon that? No. But there again, what was the rate of slave ownership in Pittsburgh area in 1860? So these are questions that have to be asked. And then, were these the largest counties? As I say, were these the largest counties where the most people were, and the large counties turned into cities, which turned into the major cities that we know of today? Look at here in New Orleans, right? Most certainly was a slave city. And this, when we are the biggest city, I believe we're the biggest city in Louisiana. Again, that's just Louisiana, because really New Orleans is really a small city. But the pre-Katrina numbers was somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000. I don't know what it is. I know after Katrina, the few years following Katrina, it was, and somewhere maybe 250,000 people came back. I don't know where it is today, but I believe that New Orleans is still the biggest city and still have the best economy. It's not really saying much, for Louisiana, that's great. It's not saying much in the entirety of the country, but it was most certainly a slave state, and I'm guessing it grew from being a bunch of people to a large city because the people were here. That it doesn't make any sense. And lastly, just how profitable was slavery? That's the question I always ask about slavery. Was it really that profitable? I mean, first of all, they had to buy the slaves. Slaves weren't cheap. I hear the slaves, an average slave, if you adjust for adjusted income today, a slave costs about somewhere near $100,000, around $100,000. How many people today, if they wanted to buy slaves, could? How many people back then were able to afford slaves? And if it's not like slaves were machines. They didn't just work 24 hours a day and that's it, like factory equipment. They had to be fed, they had to be housed, they had to be clothed. They got sick too. They had to be taken care of just as much as a white person. So were they really profitable? I mean, was it really all this free labor that they paid for? Was it really so free labor? And was slavery really as profitable as they're saying? I've never seen any evidence to back that up. That's all assumption. And then on top of that, we are told that cities in the north are more prosperous than cities in the south. Well, wait a minute. If slavery was in the south, wouldn't cities in the south be more prosperous? Again, none of this makes any sense. And then, are the black people in these supposedly rich, better counties, are the black people in these counties doing better as well? And if they're not, what's stopping them? Again, there's just so many questions you have to ask before you jump to this arbitrary assumption that these white people are all doing better, regardless if they were here during slavery, if they owned slaves when they were here, if they have a lineage of family members who own slaves or not, whether or not if they were here during slavery or not, that lineage was here or not, they still benefit from it. Is an assumption. It's a giant assumption based off of no evidence. Just some arbitrary little study, which I guarantee you, they got just enough data and looked at just enough data to tell them what they wanted to hear in the study. So this is BS. This is not any evidence of that white people still benefit from slavery. So if you ever hear any of these race hunters say that nonsense, well, now you know, and knowing it's half the battle. And as always, y'all, until next time.